Hello and welcome into Hoosier Gameday, brought to you by the Hoosier Network, where we bring you all the news, breakdowns, and analysis you need about this Hoosier football team. My name is Noel Fary. Alongside me is Liv Clements. And Liv, the Hoosiers are coming off their first true away game of the season, and it was not pretty.
No, it wasn't pretty, and it was honestly really hard to watch. I mean, you see Taven go in there, and we really were hoping for a good game for him. I mean, 17 for 29, 113 yards. Unfortunately, no touchdown and one interception. But then you had Brendan Sorsby come in. He got some play time, 7-11, 84 yards, 2 touchdowns. He really did have something going, which I think was surprising. But it did change up the offense again, which is not really what you want to see with IU right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you put in Sorsby late game when it's kind of in garbage time, and he comes in and he does pretty good. It was promising, but at that point, Maryland kind of already had put in the second stringers and third stringers. To say that the offense overall looked flat, to me, is an understatement. They had absolutely nothing going for them. And I wouldn't even necessarily say it's their fault right off the bat. I think it was the defense, the first play of the game, giving up that 60-yard pass. All the momentum whatsoever was gone from the Sails. And from then on, the team just looked out of it.
I mean, you're right. I think right now IU really relies on their defense to keep them in games. And when the defense goes left, then you struggle to find the offense, right? Because right now the highlight for IU is the defense. So like you said, those first couple plays, and it seemed like the defense didn't even know who they were defending. Like it just seemed like a mess. And I mean, then you go into the offense and they look like a mess. No one's winning a game like that, right? I mean, you go and you struggle on third downs, which is what they always do. And then fourth downs, they try again and they struggle again. But I mean, I don't think it's fair to really look and say this predicted Taven's game, because I mean, it really relies on the O-line. I mean, you have to look at all aspects of the offense, right? I mean, if the O-line's not giving Taven any time to throw, you already know that he scrambles, right, when he has to start to run. And you see him just start to run lateral. Like, go try to get some yards, like run, bro, at least try to get that first down, but he's going to struggle doing that. So I just think all aspects of the game for Maryland was just bad.
No, I agree. And I think you make a good point with, going vertical rather than lateral. I think there were so many plays where, especially with Jalen Lucas, they're tossing him these screens and he's running really far, but it's just side to side. He's not getting any yards. So I think overall, the silver lining in that game for me was the running backs. I think that, both Christian Turner and Jalen Lucas had a decent game, but I think Christian Turner really shined in this game in his big opportunity with Henderson being out. I think that he showed that he could run after contact. I think he looked pretty good in that regard, but overall, just so much left to be desired, but we'll talk a little bit more about that aspect later. For now, speaking of running backs, let's bring on our first guest of the day to take a deeper dive into that running back room here at Indiana. Welcome back in. We've got Joe Cronin in the studio with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Joe.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
So you've been covering this football team all year now so far. You've seen a lot of footage, seen a lot of gameplay. I'm curious to see what your thoughts on this running back room are.
Yeah, it's kind of been the good, the bad, and the ugly a little bit. I mean, Josh Henderson going down, I think that's where the ugly is. I think the good has been at times when Jalen Lucas is used outside the tackles or in the flat when he's used for screens, stuff like that. Him in the passing game has been pretty electric this season. Against Louisville, he had 10 catches for almost 100 yards, which was a huge bolster for the offense. And for Christian Turner to step up in his position when Henderson goes down, I think he's really solidified himself as an ability to be the brute back, the guy that gets the 12 to 15 carries a game.
Yeah, no, I think that Turner's ability, I just saw a lot of patience out of him in this game against Maryland. He was bouncing off tackles, waiting to find those holes that he needed to get through. Do you think that regardless of Henderson right now, Turner has shown enough to be a staple back in that backfield?
I do think he has. I mean, the past 2 games, he's rushed for just shy of 130 yards. He has over 10 carries in both those games. It was Akron and Maryland. He rushed for over 60 yards in both those games. Obviously, production-wise, he's averaging around 4.5 yards per carry on the season, which is pretty solid. I mean, especially for the way that this offense has been all year long, I think he has been a shining light that's not talked about enough. When you think of this offense and you think of the stars, you're going to Jalen Lucas, a couple big plays by Cam Camper, but when Christian Turner stepped in, he's done solid. I mean, he's getting the production. I think he is going to be the guy moving forward, depending on Henderson's health. He's going to be able to get those 15 carries per game, and it's going to be useful. And his experience, I think, is very underrated aspect of his game. He had those 3 years at Michigan, 2 years at Wake, and now his first year for the Hoosiers. He didn't have a ton of time at Michigan, had some good production over at Wake Forest. Those were some solid teams that he was on. But right now, it's his time to really take over, and it's a young offense on this team. There are some guys on the outside with experience, but I mean, Donovan McCulley's really in his first full year as being a receiver now.
Yeah. No, definitely. I agree with you. And you mentioned how he might start to see a bigger share of those carries. Jalen Lucas, might go down a bit. Jalen Lucas obviously is a very special talent. There's no denying that. But has that been shown enough here at IU where you think he's going to thrive here, or do you think potentially he could play better elsewhere?
I mean, there are a few people that considered him going to the transfer portal after last season's performance. He's the All-American kick returner as a true freshman, which was pretty unheard of. But this year, I think it started to maybe take a little more wear and tear on him. He's had a few returns where you see, yeah, he's that guy still, but at the same time, he's not as productive as he was. I think teams are understanding that, they're scheming more around that. So when he goes into running the ball, he's not as productive. And I think that comes down to somewhat play calling. Running Jalen Lucas in between the tackles just won't work. I mean, there are times that you get the hole, he's going to be able to make a move, get 5-6 yards, but he's better outside the tackles. Let him in the open field. He's going to make a guy miss a 50% rate to make a guy miss, not even getting touched. That's a pretty high clip, and he does it pretty effectively. He's hard to tackle, especially, he's 5'6", but he's just so shifty. He's going to be able to get around that edge if he has the ability to. I think when he's worked in the passing game, he's more effective. I mean, I'm a firm believer. You throw him in the slot receiver, he could be dangerous. I mean, throw him on some slant routes, keep him on the screen game. If you want to do some jet sweeps with him, that could be electric. But starting him lined up 6 yards behind Taven Jackson, running in between the guards even, it's just a recipe for disaster for someone of his stature.
No, I definitely agree with you. And I think overall on the year, you take a look at this running back room, it's been somewhat one of the bright spots of the offense. There's a little bit left to be desired, but thank you so much, Joe, for joining us today on Hoosier Gameday. We're going to send it over to Liv and Taniya for some of the biggest Hoosier news of the week.
Welcome back in. We have Taniya Jones back in the studio with us, of course. And following this past weekend's Maryland game, the Hoosiers made a big decision and moved on from Walt Belt, their offensive coordinator. Walt Belt first year was in December of 2021, but now has been replaced with Rod Carey, their quality control coach, but also their offensive line coach since 2022. With Walt Belt, they went 98th nationally in the scoring last season, with Indiana now 2-3 overall in the season and 0-2 in Big Ten play. After that IU loss against Maryland, 44-17, I got to say it was kind of expected. So T, was this really what IU needed? I mean, was this really the time to again switch things up? Like, it seems like this is just an IU thing at this point.
Yeah. I don't know if a lot of people know or they know like a lot about IU football history, but this is a trend with IU.
Right.
Anytime things get rough or things get hard, they feel like they can't progress the way they need to. They fire. Mm-hmm. Like if you were to look at the last couple of coaches, they have it's starting from the 1800s. They have fired everybody. And so I wouldn't say this is what they needed. What I will say is that things are going downhill very quickly, and they are trying to scram to find who's the best. But it's like, there's no who's the best. The best is on the field, and you guys are not coaching them.
Right. And unfortunately, I feel like now that's like put a target on the coaches and taken away from the players. I mean, like, you look for the players to really be the star of the show.
Right.
And now you've highlighted this coaching staff, and it's just not about them right now. Yes, coaching help people win. But I mean, like, now you're changing it up again. I mean, you look at that QB position, that's been going back and forth, right? I mean, Maryland, they played 2 QBs again. I mean, you're so late in the season to still be making those changes. Yeah. Do you think this is going to affect now that QB position again? Because Rod Carey will take over that QB coaching moment. So do you think now this is just going to be another QB tryout? Like, do you think it should be another worry in that sense?
I think within this, like, the first point that I kind of want to, like, reiterate here, well, I didn't even say it yet, is that defense wins games.
Right.
No matter how you slice, if you're playing football, if you're playing basketball, like, defense wins games. And so within this, you have this offensive coordinator coming in, he's stepping in, whatever he thinks he's about to do, how do you think that is going to benefit IU?
Right.
Like, when you look at the QB position, he's already a freshman. That's already like a challenge within itself, right? And so then you're like, he now has thousands of people all in his ear telling him, one, what to do, how to play, and not even that, how to do a position that he loves in a sense.
Right.
And so then you have people coming in and they're changing agendas. And what if he doesn't follow the coaching style of Cary?
Right.
Then that's going to be a problem within itself. And then now IU football is a lost cause.
Right. And I think we already kind of see it, like you said, becoming a lost cause.
Yeah.
So going deeper into that, I mean, Coach Allen, like we brought up about a couple times now. I mean, his buyout right now is $20 million, which is a lot. But then come next year, it'll go down to $8 million. Do you think now Allen might have to look in the mirror and say, this could be me this time next year?
I think Allen can go ahead and start doing that now.
Yeah.
He can go ahead and start doing it now. We should have been looking in the mirror.
Right.
We should have been looking in the mirror in 2020. Yeah. We should have been looking in the mirror there. And I say that because it's like, you have all of this. You have all of this money. The IU has literally given you any and everything you have wanted, needed. You can be the coach that you were set out to be, but instead you are not. And so with your buyout being $20 million and then going down to $8 million, now it's a money thing. Yeah. Now it's a funds thing. It's not even a coaching thing anymore. It's about funds. And when the game becomes about money, then that becomes a problem because it's not fun no more. We're not putting our hearts into this no more. We're not creating art like we used to. You're just putting boys out on the field and you're like, well, if they win or lose, I'm getting paid anyway.
Yeah.
And that's trash.
I mean, it takes like you said, just takes the love out of the game. I mean, you look at money and now it's not about the players. Now it's like, actually, we don't care who plays or who wins.
Right.
I'm going to leave regardless. Wish the best.
Got my $20 million. I'm good.
So I think it's fair for Allen to be looking in the mirror at this point. I think he really needs to considering that this could be you next year. I mean, still try to finish the season strong, but IU really needs to be looking at a different coaching style coming this year and a lot of transfers possibly leaving or staying.
Yeah, we need to be looking at a different coach.
Yes.
And preferably, and like I know this would not be Indiana football, but like Colorado. Right. They have Deion Sanders.
Right.
Like, come on, guys.
Right.
And not even that, but them boys are killing it. No matter if they just lost or not, they quite literally have the best coach in the nation.
I agree.
In the nation. And it's like, okay, does IU need a Deion Sanders?
We'll be looking for one.
We'll get into it.
Applications are here. I think
on the ground.
We're hiring.
Yeah, fill them out.
With that being said, T, thank you so much for joining us this week. As always, Noel and I will be back to give some quick thoughts on what we think the Hoosiers will come up with the rest of the season.
The Hoosiers have a bye week this weekend, so unfortunately or fortunately, no Indiana football game to watch. But after this first true away game of the season, Liv, I am not very confident that this team can get another win down the stretch at all.
I unfortunately agree. I really don't think that there's a flow going, and I unfortunately don't think you can find that flow now. I do think now from going on the rest of the season, I think you should really look into just finding their key players. I think that key players really need to step up to the gate. I don't think as a team that they're going to win any more games, but I do think players can start to step up. I think Taven should take every game as important. Sorsby step up, Jalen Lucas. I mean, we really have liked Christian Turner so far. So I really think this is going to be solid for the players to continue. I don't think as a team that this is really going to be solid. I do think if they were to win another game, that Rutgers game would be fun to win. I mean,
Very true.
homecoming is always good.
Homecoming.
So, I mean, that could be a really good game to put under their belt. But unfortunately, I think that teams have really solidified where they are in the Big Ten. And I think IU just falls at the bottom.
Yeah. No, I agree. And you're coming off of an Akron game that was deflating.
Right.
A Maryland game that was even more deflating. And now you have a bye week this weekend. You go into Michigan the weekend after. And that's not necessarily their fault. There's not many teams in the country that can have a good game against Michigan. But I think that they are going to be beaten down by then and just picking themselves back up from that. It'll be tough if they can do it. Props to them. Like you said, there's plenty of talented players throughout this roster. But getting enough of them to string it together to win another game, does not look like it's
Yeah.
too probable.
I mean, we talked at the beginning of this show, though, that like there were certain games that were a must-win, right? And I think that you saw that with the Akron game. It was a must-win. Yes, they won, but it was not supposed to be like that, right? So I think those games were winnable, and that gave them momentum going into Michigan. Even if that's going to be a hard game, you still need momentum going into it to at least feel some confidence. And now that I feel like they really have hit rock bottom, I don't think there's any sort of morale anymore in that locker room.
Well, hopefully they'll be able to turn it around a little bit, but that's all we've got for you on this week's episode of Hoosier Game Day, brought to you by the Hoosier Network. We'll be back same time next week for all the news, breakdowns, and analysis you need. Thank you all so much for tuning in. For Liv Clements, Taniya Jones, and Joe Cronin, I'm Noel Fary. We'll catch you next time.